is very limited, this webinar jointly organized by the ICGEB and the NSF on writing an effective research proposal to secure a grant under ICGEB collaborative research program, I consider as timely and very important. Dear participants from Sri Lanka, talking a little bit about the ICGEB, you must be knowing that the NSF is serving as the national focal point for ICGEB since 1993. ICGEB is a fully autonomous international organization with an interactive network of around 64 member states. It's an institution of excellence that plays a key role in biotechnology R&D activities worldwide, providing funds for research, training, and technology transfer for industry. From 1993 to date, the ICGEB has awarded a number of postdoctoral and doctoral fellowships to Sri Lanka and has provided opportunities to Sri Lankan researchers to take part in scientific meetings at ICGEB and local. Apart from that, the ICGEB has provided financial support to conduct meetings and courses locally. The value of all these opportunities granted by the ICGEB is enormous. Under this collaborative research program, also, Sri Lanka is benefited with a number of grants, coming up to 8 since 2006. So I take this opportunity to thank the ICGEB on behalf of the NSF management for their continued support extended to supplement the Sri Lankan R&D efforts in biotechnology. The NSF, in collaboration with the ICGEB, organized a similar webinar last year. As an outcome, the number of CRP applications from our researchers increased up to 26. It was a significant increase compared to previous years. As a result, the NSF was able to endorse high-quality proposals to ICGEB. Out of those, 2 proposals were successful at the first phase of evaluation, and the outcome is yet to receive. This year also, ICGEB and NSF together are organizing this webinar, aiming at harnessing outstanding high-quality proposals from well-performed Sri Lankan researchers. Sri Lankan researchers, particularly the young researchers, are yet to learn how to write a winning proposal according to ICGEB expectations. So this is extremely a challenging task. The problem may be with the lack of understanding about the ICGEB philosophy, vision, and structuring the proposals in an effective way to attract ICGEB evaluators. Therefore, this webinar will be extremely important to acquire the guidance and knowledge to fit in with the ICGEB requirements. At this webinar today, we have a team of excellent speakers to deliver the most important material to us. Therefore, it is envisaged that the shared experience and best practices will enable our participants to draw up their next proposal, seeking the support of the ICGEB effectively. So I extend my warm regards to Dr. Lawrence Bank, the Director General of the ICGEB. He visited Sri Lanka in 2019, and we will have the memories of that event still, where ICGEB technology transfers were made open to the local pharmaceutical manufacturers. I warmly welcome the officials of the ICGEB, the distinguished speakers, the officials of the NSF, and all invited participants to this timely and important webinar. I wish you all have a successful webinar today with very interesting material to take home. Taking this opportunity to thank again Dr. Lawrence Bank, the Director General of the ICGEB and his staff, the head of the IAD, Dr. Shantasiri, and his staff for organizing this timely event. I conclude my welcome note. Wish you all a very successful online webinar and a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Vittorio Venturi, ICGEB Scientific Coordinator, to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I would like to very much thank Dr. Tamara Diaz for her welcome remarks, and also the all NSF team for organizing this event, especially Dr. Shanta Siri, who has been extremely efficient and always available with us in putting this event together. I have to, our Director General, Dr. Lawrence Banks, obviously apologizes for not being able to be here and to deliver this welcome address and to see you all. Unfortunately, he's traveling at this moment. I think this is a great opportunity to meet again. Our CRP program, ICGB is a granting agency, and our CRP program is the most popular program. And in my view, bringing funding to laboratories in our member countries is a paramount, and it's a paramount program, and it's a paramount way to improve biotechnology in our member countries. So our the ICGB activity to encourage applications and then to select the most deserving ones is a really fantastic tool to promote science in our member countries. Because it is so popular, unfortunately, it is very competitive. We receive so many more projects than we can fund. So, Dr. Lawrence Banks and the team here and the team in ICGB, in all our three components, are always looking at alternative ways to fund more CRPs. So my message also, the message of ICGB to NSF, we will, it is quite a lot of work that we do to select and to read and select all the CRPs, and to have also our team of reviewers, external reviewers, that select our CRP. So we will be able to then provide feedback. And as I said before, not being able to fund all the CRPs that really merit the funding. So we are very open to use this information, to use this work in order to find alternative ways to fund more CRPs. So I'm very happy of this event. As as Nadesha said, please, we usually have it's quite informal, interactive. So any questions the stars of this event are the participants, the scientists that are interested in applying. So any question you have, please write it in the chat box, and we will do our best to reply to them. And also by the end of my presentation, I will give some emails that you can contact if you have any further questions. Just on a final note, at the moment I have here in my laboratory, I'm a microbiologist. I have a short-term fellow from Sri Lanka, from the University of Columbus. So just to show you that we have Sri Lankan scientists also here in ICGB at the moment, which is a great pleasure for us. So again, I welcome you all, and I thank NSF, Dr. Tamara Diaz, and all her team for putting this together. And I'm very much looking forward to interacting with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. As the first presenter, we have Ms. Tijana Delik, ICGB Consultant, International Relations. So she's going to talk about fostering R&D innovation across the seas, introduction to the ICGB. Over to you, Ms. Tijana.
Thank you, Dr. Muhandira. And thank you very much for the lovely introductory speech to Dr. Diaz, who is the ICGB Liaison Officer for Sri Lanka. And we also collaborate very well with Dr. Ranjit Senaratne, also from NSF. And we have been very happy with the relationship that we've had and with the level of preparation and information that has been established so far. So hopefully today will contribute to that. I'm now going to share my screen and let you see the ICGB presentation. Just a second, I'm sorry. I don't seem to have the possibility to share my screen. Okay, let me see if. I'm sorry for the delay. It's just that I don't seem to have the allowance.
Permission already granted.
Yes, I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
Sharing permission is already granted.
Yes, I can see that I'm co-host. However, it seems that my computer is not allowing me to do so. Just a second. Would it be possible for me to send my presentation to someone who can then share it? I can send it here in the chat to a National Science Foundation, if that is okay. Would that be all right?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. There is something wrong with an update that I've recently had, apparently. Okay. Okay. It's loading in the chat to National Science Foundation. So sorry for the delay. In the meantime, I can tell you a little bit about ICGEB even without the, the presentation. Now you should have received it, so maybe you will be able to share it instead of me. As Dr. Diaz announced, we currently have 66 member countries. So the ICGEB, the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, is actually an organization which is made of countries. And our member countries are the most important to us and also influence our priorities and decisions, and also most importantly influence the science that is performed at ICGEB laboratories. There are a total of around 750 people working at the ICGEB components in Trieste, where we have the headquarters in Italy, in Cape Town, South Africa, and in New Delhi, India. And of these 750 people, around 100 people are people who work in supporting the science, so various administrative tasks, and the rest are all people who are scientists, which is the core business of the ICGEB. We are a UN organization, and we started off as a project of UNIDO, so of the United Nations, and then became an independent international organization. And we are still linked with the United Nations in terms of administration and mandate. And one of the most important things is that we follow the Sustainable Development Goals in line with the 2030 UN agenda. You will be able to see if you visit our website that our projects and partnerships are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. May I ask if it's possible to share my presentation now by the National Science Foundation? Could you share your screen? I'm sorry, is it possible for NSF to share my presentation?
Yes, sir. That will take a little while. We'll start it.
Ah, okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry about this. It seems that I don't have some kind of permission on my computer, which has been recently updated. So it's probably regarding that. All right. I will continue speaking. So we are governed by a body which is called the Board of Governors, containing a representative from each country, and this is Dr. Senaratne for Sri Lanka. And there, all of the decisions are made on the future actions of the center. We decide the budget, the strategies, and all of the countries participate in this. We're going to have our Board of Governors meeting in May of this year, on the 17th and 18th of May, and we hope to see the participation of Sri Lanka representatives as well. The Board of Governors is supported by the so-called Council of Scientific Advisors, also visible on our website, containing multiple Nobel laureates. The Council of Scientific Advisors make sure that the ICGB science is top-notch. So there is a continuous monitoring and decision-making regarding which science is treated and is done at ICGB and associated laboratories. As Dr. Venturi mentioned, we have and have had scientists from Sri Lanka and would welcome them wholeheartedly. And our laboratories currently host scientists from more than 40 different countries in the world, most of them member countries of the ICGB. Let's say today, most important opportunity that we can mention are CRPs, the so-called collaborative research grants, which ICGB finances. And the average of each project is about 15,000 euro per year. However, there is the possibility to also receive different kind of funding. And we also offer the possibility of, thank you very much. So this is the presentation showing which countries of the world are covered by ICGB. As you can see, the member states are in dark green, and lighter green are signatory states, which are going to become full members. And we have our 3 host countries with the 3 components. The headquarters are in Italy, and then South Africa and India. If you could please go on, thank you. This is how the ICGB was founded. Until 1995, it was a UNIDO project, and from 1995 until today, it is an international organization, and our mandate is research, training, and technology transfer in life sciences for promoting sustainable global development. Thank you, we can go on. This is a picture of our last 2019 ICGB Board of Governors, which we hope to host in person this year as well. Next slide. And these are the Council of Scientific Advisors members. As you can see, the asterisks are for the Nobel laureates among them. We're going to have a new mandate starting for some new CSA members, and always candidates from Sri Lanka are welcome. Next slide. Thank you. The instruments of action of the ICGB, which I started mentioning, are the cutting edge research that is performed in its 3 laboratories. And next slide. And these are the macro areas and groups of the research which is present currently at ICGB. As you can see, we have groups dealing with these macro areas: infectious diseases, non-communicable diseases, and this is across the components. This is in all 3 components. And next slide. And then medical biotechnology, industrial biotechnology, plant biology, and biotechnology, of which some are even the most recent groups. Thank you, next slide. This is an example of recent international publications that we have published. We also publish in Nature magazine and all of the top publications. Next slide. And a next instrument of action are the short and long-term fellowships for PhD students and postdoctoral students. So if anyone from the audience is also interested in that, you can see the calls currently open on our website. The fellowships calls expire at the end of March, so in that case, you would need to hasten. However, the competitive grants, which were mentioned by Dr. Venturi, expire at the end of April, so there is time. And the meetings and courses mentioned by Dr. Diaz. Next slide. Thank you. These are the posters for the PhD and postdoctoral current open calls. Next slide. And these are the fellows on board in, for example, year 2020, showing where they come from and the distribution across male and female. As you can see, we support very much also female participation in the life sciences. And these are the countries of provenance of the 2020 batch of fellows. Next slide. And these are the current ongoing research grants. As you can see, some of them, 2 of them are currently ongoing in Sri Lanka. And as Dr. Diaz said, there have been a total of 8 so far. And next slide. These are the meetings and courses available. This is the call which was closed this year. There will be another call opened during this year to organize courses in 2020 4. And if anyone is interested in organizing a course or a workshop, you can follow our website for updates. And next slide, thank you. The last instrument of action is technology transfer, which shares what has been discovered and what is working at the ICGEB with the industry, specifically for the production of biotherapeutics and diagnostics. And next slide. These are some research and development collaborations that have been established from 2005 until today. And these are the countries with which we have collaborated, including Sri Lanka. So we have had R&D with Sri Lanka. And next slide. And these are our partners so far. This is constantly being updated based on the projects that the ICGEB has ongoing. And next slide. This is an example of a regional research center which was opened in Taizhou, China. Regional research centers are, let's say, something between an ICGEB component and an ICGEB affiliated center, working independently, however, working as a representative of the ICGEB. And next slide. This is some of the outreach activity that we do for the lay public. So for the non-experts, including children and young people, we care very deeply about the communication of our science. And next slide. And these are the scientific collections which some of you may be interested in, which are freely available on our website, on the Apple Podcast platform, and on YouTube. These are some of the seminars, workshops, and courses which have been held so far, including some tutorials on specific laboratory processes and systems, which anyone can access as freeware. And next slide. The summary of what country can benefit from is present here. So we've mentioned CRP grants in general, and also Dr. Venturi will go into a little more detail about early career return grants, which are a subtype of CRPs. And next slide. We have mentioned tech transfer, and also very important for any of you who are interested, member countries and their laboratories have an access to our state-of-the-art facilities in the 3 ICGEB components. So if there is anything that a facility, for example, the high throughput facility, which we have here in Trieste, which you would need to use for an experiment or for anything that you are currently working on, you can request access to our laboratories and use that for the course of your experiments. And next slide. This is a contact for any of you who might have any further questions. And I thank you very much for your patience, especially for the collaboration on the sharing of the presentation. And I give the word to Dr. Venturi, who will tell you a little bit more about our CRPs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tijana. Our next presentation is on key messages to prospective applicants, scope, priority area, eligibility and evaluation criteria of ICGEB CRP grant application. So I cordially invite Dr. Vittorio Venturi to deliver the presentation. Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
And can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nadisha, for introducing me. So what I will do now in the next 20 minutes or so is to go through our CRP program and provide some application guidelines and application tips that applicants can hopefully use. Okay. Before I start about CRPs, very quickly, obviously, we also have, as it was mentioned, we have several fellowships programs, and we have a PhD fellowships in all our 3 components in Italy, in India, and South Africa. And the deadline for this is actually next week. So, and this is a very popular program, and it is our flagship fellowship program. And again, I will urge the scientists that are listening maybe next year, if they have motivated candidates, they can encourage them to apply to our PhD fellowship program. We also have a postdoctoral fellowship program for postdocs to go to our 3 components. And here we have 2 deadlines, the end of March, but is also that we also have a September deadline. So here, if there are some candidates who are interested in some of the research that we do in ICGEB, they are welcome to contact the group leaders and ask whether they could put together an application for the September deadline. We also have short-term applications, so both PhD short-term and PhD long and postdoc short-term, where if you're a PhD currently doing a PhD in Sri Lanka, for example, and you want to spend a little bit of time in one of the labs in ICGEB, and this is a very focused for a very focused reason, okay, then you're encouraged to apply here. For example, I have at the moment a short-term PhD fellow from Sri Lanka in my laboratory, and she's here in order to make a mutant in a bacteria in a gene that she's studying in her PhD, and we have the competence to make the mutants, and they don't have the competence in Sri Lanka, so it's a perfect scenario for a short-term PhD fellowship. She's coming here for 6 months to do this work. Same for a postdoc. If you're currently doing a postdoc in Sri Lanka and you want to spend some time of your postdoc here in one of the ICGEB components, in one of the groups, again, this is something you can look into. Also, what I urge all PIs, but also PIs can look at this for their students in their lab, is that we also have other fellowship programs apart from our core long-standing PhD and postdoctoral long and short term. Our Director General Lawrence Banks has been and the management team has been extremely active in the last 2 years, looking for further funding opportunities to extend these programs, and they've been very successful in making collaborations and agreements with other organizations to bring more fellowships into the arena. And these are very tailored. For example, this is a UN South-South cooperation. We have also fellowships for women. We have special fellowships for going to some South African universities. So we have a special program with TWAS and the UN Technology Bank. So my suggestion is always look at our website, because apart from our core programs, there are other programs that might be of interest to you. And finally, before we start with the CRPs, I also mentioned our meetings and courses. These are very important events. We fund or sponsor up to 30 events a year. So what I want to say here are 2 things. If you're a PI that wishes to organize an event in 2020 in the future, unfortunately the deadline for this year, we have 1 call a year, but the next deadline will be February 2023. So if you have something that you want to organize, think about it and then be ready for applying in 2023. The other thing I want to say is to the young students. So we have our events published in our website, and all our events have special grants for our young students from a member country. So if you have any students that want to apply to some of our courses and workshops, please go and have a look on our website, and then you can apply to our events in order to attend them. Okay. So here we are, the CRP grants. So the first point, very important point I want to make, is that the deadline for the submission is the 30th of April, 2022. So there still is some time, but not too much. So if you're thinking to apply, you have to move very quickly. We scientists tend to work all the last minute. So in principle, you have a bit of time to put together a successful proposal. So the first point I want to mention is eligibility. Now, in order to apply for a CRP grant, applicants must hold a position at a university or a research institution in any of the ICGEB member country. In this case, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an historic ICGEB member country. So if you're a group leader, if you're a professor, if you have an independent group in any research organization in the life sciences, in Sri Lanka, you can apply. Now, the other point I want to make here, you do not have to be of Sri Lankan nationality. The important thing is that you hold a position in Sri Lanka and you do the science in Sri Lanka. Okay, this is an important point. So if you're an American or you are from Thailand or from anywhere in the world, even, but you work in, your position in Sri Lanka, you can apply. Okay. Now, it is called a collaborative research program, but I want to mention immediately that collaboration with ICGEB research group is very welcome, but it's not mandatory. So yet again here, if your research work is a good scientific, high scientific level, and you do not have a collaboration with ICGEB for several reasons, maybe there isn't a scientist in the ICGEB research community in the components that is involved in your research, or maybe the scientist that is involved is not actually interested in your project. That's okay. You still apply. You will not be handicapped by not having a collaborator in the ICGEB team. If you can have, great, but if it's not possible, do not force it. Okay, the science will count at the end. Now, the topic of research, again here, we like to see that your topic of research, of the research proposal, is relevant to your country, to Sri Lanka. And we know that Sri Lanka has some specific questions to address, which are very important for Sri Lanka or to the region, and that we like to see that. But yet again, it must not be forced. If your research involves high quality fundamental science in a mechanism, that's also okay. So here, what I'm saying is that do not force your research proposal in this direction because you think it will make it better. I mean, it is true, if it is high quality in a topic of relevance, it's great. But if it's high quality in a topic, it's also fine. Okay. Now, at every call, each member country can submit each member country can endorse 5 CRP grants. 3 are standard grants, and 2 can be early career grants. So what is an early career grant? This is intended for young scientists that have a good track record. Young research, young PIs. Again, you have to have your own independent research group. You have to be young, and you have to, of course, a good track record. But you must spend a minimum 2 years abroad. And these 2 years that you must not be older than 40. I mean, we do realize that science is competitive, takes time. So 40, I think, is a good age. Is not very young. It's a good time to limit a young scientist. Okay, and importantly, the 2 years that you spent abroad must be no more than 2 years prior to submitting the application. So you must have spent 2 years abroad, and when you apply, you must have come back to Sri Lanka no longer than 2 years. Okay, so if you fit in this category, you're less than 40, you spent 2 years abroad, and you've come back 2 years or less, you qualify for an early career grant. So say that in your application, and then the Sri Lankan team will endorse you. If they think you're endorsable, they will endorse you for an early career grant. So five applications from each member country, 3 standard. So if you don't fit in this category, you will be a standard grant. If you fit this, you will be an early career grant. Okay, so let's move into what are the important points for a successful project. Now, many of the points I mentioned here are not only relevant to our collaborative research program of the ICGEB, they can also be relevant to any grant application that you will do, that you could write. Some are very specific for ICGEB, and I will mention that to you when it's so. But in general, I think there are good points also for any grant application. So, when you put together a grant application, here in ICGEB, we want to see a clear hypothesis and a specific question. We don't, if you start asking a lot of questions, or, we want to study the pathogenicity of the fungus under, under so many different conditions or under, you know, in different hosts, then you're spreading your wings too much. Keep it precise, specific. Another important point, you know, CRP grants are for a maximum of 3 years. You know, you can also do less, 2 years. You know, 1 year is very rare. You know, if you think your work you're proposing 2 years is enough, say 2 years, but most applicants are for 3 years, you know. And also look at the budget that is available. Be realistic with the time and the money that you're asking. You know, you know, the scientists that will read your proposals, you know, are experienced and they apply for grants themselves all the time. So they are fully aware of the time that it takes to do the research and the money that it takes. If you are over the top with these two aspects, you know, if you want to impress by saying you will do so much, it will work against you. You will not get funded because it's not realistic. So don't be overdrawn by, oh, I'm going to show how much I can do. You know, I'm going to do so much. I'm going to propose so much. It will work against you. It has to be realistic. So clear hypothesis, specific question, realistic, novelty. You know, we're looking for novelty all the time. Everybody looks for novelty. Novelty when you publish, novelty when you. So we understand this is very difficult, but we need to see it. You know, it doesn't have to be extraordinary novel, but there has to be some novelty there. What will work against you if you're proposing a confirmatory experiments or experiments with expected results. Experiments, for example, in one host system or in one species, we've seen this, now we want to see it, what happens in this one. You know, in this plant species, we've seen that this gene is important for resistance. What about in this other plant species? So you know, the degree of novelty there is very low. It might be important to do that, and then you might get points and you might get funded, but in general, novelty is important. We want to see that you're taking that field forward. Be concise, obviously, you know, when you write. And again, I mentioned this again, if the project is relevant to a host country, obviously that is nice. But if your research is very high level in a fundamental question, go for it. Now, these 2 points I'm going to make now are very specific and extremely, they are pivotal and important for ICGEB grants. Without them, you don't get funded. So the first one is collaboration. Your research grant must have collaboration. And the collaboration, you know, you have to bring in people, scientists that do different things, that have a different expertise from you. So you bring your project is interdisciplinary. It's not okay to bring in somebody with your same expertise. So, you know, you're not bringing new techniques or new model system, new approaches to your work. We know today that science requires, you know, the specific questions that you ask requires different expertise, microscopy, omics, model systems, you know, computational biology. We need different expertise in your questions. So bring in people with different expertise. These can be regional. You know, you can bring in some, for example, Sri Lanka. You can have collaborators from India or from Bangladesh or from Thailand. You know, or also international, far away. But they have to be out. You know, ideally, they have to be. You can also have them national, but we really want to see some international collaboration. The second is training. We want to see training of young scientists, PhDs or postdocs. You know, also master students can also be an option. Ideally, PhDs or postdocs, you know, that are involved in the project. And ideally, these can then, you know, these young, 1 or 2 of them can move to a collaborator as well in order to get trained into something else, into another technique or trained into another aspect. And again, here, in both of these collaborations, it's not enough to say, oh, I'm going to have a collaborator from so-and-so, or I'm going to train two scientists. No, collaborator, name, surname, support letter. Training, put a name to the students who will be trained and how they will be trained. So we see that this concrete and it's well in place. You know, sometimes, you know, very often we get grants People say, oh, I will look for a collaborator in proteomics abroad, or I will train a couple of scientists. It's not good enough, because we can't guarantee that the applicant has really clearly placed this collaboration and training, and if we can't see that, will not get funded. Okay. Now, the application form is all online, which is great. You don't have to print, or we don't have to send anything here. And just to go through it, you will see that the forms online will ask you different things. Obviously, one of the first things, we want to see the details of the PI. We want to see, have some, we want to see your background. We want to see what you've published, what grants you had, where you've been educated. Like you will fill in some parts which will give us information about some of your history. Title and abstract, again here, these are important. These are the first things, the first words that your reviewers will read is your title and title. Sometimes we see very long titles, not good. Short, concise, to the point. And the abstract, again, very concise and already showing what are your aims. The abstract, it should be clear where you're going. Introduction, there will be the scientist reviewing your proposal will be working in that field. So we need to see evidence that you are properly citing the literature and that you're fully up to date with the current knowledge of that topic. And at the end of the introduction, you have to, a few lines saying how your work will take this field forward. So what's your hypothesis of what you're trying to do? So, if we read an introduction which is not citing the most recent papers and it's not up to date, it's not a good sign. It means that the applicant is not fully aware of what's going on in that field, and that will be rejected, and that will be most likely be rejected, that proposal. We want to, obviously, you want to do research in a topic, you have to be completely on top of it. And then the research, you will have the research project aims, milestone, methodologies, collaborative experiments, the facilities that you have available, and the training that you will do, and an outline in time frame. So all these have to be clear, concise, and linked with each other. We want to see that the aims, the milestone, methodologies are all, they all have a chronological setting and a chronological meaning. And the time frame, again, realistic. Again, as I said before, the collaboration, provide details of each collaborator and the contribution to the project. And you can send a support letter from your collaborator. There's a CRP email I will give you at the end. You can put it, oh, this is, if you cannot upload it, send it to the CRP. Oh, this is a collaborators on my project, and this is the support. So the collaborator can write, very happy to collaborate with you. We will provide, if they can provide extra support, or we will provide support to the project, give an outline of what how the collaborator will contribute to the project. That is really important. The training, again, full details of the people involved, their role, and potential benefit gained from the training. Again, this is to be clear. In all the sections, you will have space limitations. Stick to it. Don't have to go to the last character, to the last word. To impress. I've used every single. Sono impegnato in Zoom. Arrivo. Ci sentiamo. So don't think that you are that going to the limits will be helpful. Use the words that you need. If it's less, that's fine. Sometimes there's the feeling, I have to use every single word, and then we see that your writing is a little less concise. Now you will see in our website, you will see that there's a file that you can download on how to write an ICGEB grant proposal, which hopefully will contain everything I've said and even more. Okay, so you can download that, and that will provide, you know, in writing the things I said and even more. Okay. Again, timeline and budget. Most projects that you can have a maximum of 3 years. You know, unfortunately, research takes time. So my suggestion is try to make a project for 3 years. If you want to make a very, very focused project that takes 2 years, that is also fine. We fund also 2-year projects. Less common, but we do. Okay. Make sure the feasibility is there. You know, you can, you know, the first year I do this, the second year I do this, and the third year I do this, and it's all very well explained and realistic. Now, the maximum contribution from ICGEB is 25,000 euro per year. So 25, 25, 25. The budget, you know, there are guidelines, and they're all written in the guideline for application. So my suggestion, read carefully. You know, you can allocate funds for consumables, for literature, for equipment, for travel, for training, but they each have a limitation. So if you are not sticking to these rules, it's not a good sign. Now, having said that, if your project for a specific reason must exceed one of the budget guidelines, my suggestion is to do it, but then justify it. For example, if you need an equipment that exceeds the cost allocated for equipment, but you really need that piece of equipment for the project, you can write, oh, I've put that equipment, we exceed, but we need it for this and this reason. We are flexible. But if you don't write anything and you exceed in all and your budget is completely out of context, then it will not get funded. So keep in context. If you do have to go away from the guidelines, let us know and provide a justification. Now, be aware that in this funding, the salaries of the PIs cannot be supported. So the PI must have a position, ideally a permanent position, ideally, but it must have a position as a PI in a university and institution. And also, we don't provide overheads in our you know, we don't give an enormous amount of money. So unfortunately, we don't provide overheads. Okay. Now, this is the painful part for me to let you know. You know, I mean, we do encourage applications, but you know, I've just submitted a grant application to the European Union on Horizon project, and I've just heard today that 64 proposals were in that particular call that I submitted. 64 proposals were submitted, and only 5 will be funded. So, I mean, unfortunately, here the numbers are very, very cruel. And what I will tell you the numbers in the next slide. Now, what I will tell you is how we perform the selection process. So we receive all the endorsed applications. In fact, we receive all applications, but we start looking only at the endorsed ones. And the first screen is done by the liaison officer of the country. So, you know, the liaison officer will receive, I don't know, last year was over 20, this year might be even more. They will receive all these projects, but they can, as I said, they can only endorse 5, 3 standard and 2 early career. So the first selection is done by the liaison officer in the country. Now, all the grants that the liaison officer will receive, a copy of them will also be here in ICGEB. So we can always, in case, go back to look at all the applicants if we wish to. Now, the ones, we have 66 member countries. So you can see we will get a lot of endorsed applications to ICGEB. Once we receive all the endorsed applications, they will initially go through a triage. So they will be read by at least 2 ICGEB senior scientists in that particular field. If we don't have that particular field for some reason, we will then ask external reviewers even to do the triage. And in this triage, you know, what the scientists will do, they will try to tick the boxes that I've mentioned. Is it concise? Does it have a specific question? Is the budget realistic? Is the time frame realistic? Has a good degree of novelty? Just ticking all these boxes. Does it have the collaboration in place? Does it have the training in place? And and I can tell you that in most cases that of projects that don't pass the triage is because one of these criteria is not fulfilled. And then the one that passed the triage will go to peer review for at least 2 international experts. And you can appreciate all the work here. We have to triage it, and then we will send it to two external reviewers who will receive the link, the project to review. And we have a reviewer form that they have to fill in with, we will ask specific questions about the standard of the project. And very often many of our reviewers have been reviewing for us for many years, so they are very much aware of our program. And these are the numbers which are really, really, really cool. You see, if we non-endorsed applications, it's now increasing even more. It's even over 600. And then the liaison, these are submitted to liaison offices, and then we will get 150 to 200 endorsed applications here in ICGEB. And then we will do the triage, as I mentioned. And now it's much closer to 80. Last time, I think between 80 to 100 will be then, quite a lot from the applications that endorse actually end up in peer review. And this number is actually, last year, we're closer to 30 now. Our Director General, the management team is really, really doing the best we can to fund as many projects as possible, because this is really the most popular program. So we're now close to 30 that we can fund. Sometimes we need to leverage a bit the budget of the grants, but we want to reach up to 30. So you can see that, from 500 to 600, even more now submitted, not endorsed. We only fund 25, 30. So it's a very low percentage. So if you think you have the project, the novelty, the question, and everything in place, go for it. But if you think that you're still in high seas, you're still thinking about it, you don't have a collaboration in place, if you leave it for next year, because the competition is so high. So my suggestion is go for it if you're really ready. Okay. This is what I mentioned before. This is what you can download in our website, how to write an ICGEB grant proposal, and everything. Hopefully all the things I've said are written here, and maybe even more. And also we have a file that you can download, frequently asked questions. So maybe you have several questions, and some of them will also be listed here, and there are the answers provided. So that's it. That's what I want to say. Thank you for your attention. I hope it has been useful. Here in this last slide, you have 2 emails. So we have a CRP email that you can address any questions you have, but not only questions. If you have any ideas on how to improve, on our program, and also if you have any ideas of additional funding we can apply to together, the NSF or any other organization in Sri Lanka that wishes to discuss with us ways of extending funding in Sri Lanka, we'll be happy to discuss it with you. And also what I put here is our Director General email that is always ready to receive your comments and suggestions. Okay, thank you very much, and we're very happy to try and answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your informative presentation. We have 2 more presentations from Sri Lankan side. Before that, we can give a little time if you have any doubts regarding the CRP grant application or eligibility criteria or etc. If you have any questions, please post to the chat box. Sir, one of the participants have asked, can I know if the salaries of the PhD students are eligible to be covered by the ICGEB funding?
Okay, so here I'm afraid not. What can be funded is if the PhD student needs to go somewhere for a training period, or you need to host somebody for a training period in your lab, then that we can fund. But not if the PhD student, his PhD student is in your lab and needs, and it's part of a PhD program in your lab and it needs funding in your lab. So we will fund the cost related to people coming in your lab, or young scientists or scientists going to another lab. That can be funded.
Any more questions?
And the budget guidelines, you will see how much funding you can get for training, and there you can use that funding for funding, for example, PhD students to travel and cover the expenses of going to another lab to do some training.
May I just ask a further question? Maybe the question was referred not to CRP grants, but to ICGEB fellowships.
Yeah. So in that
Okay.
case, yeah, in that case also, we have fellowships, but that also involves moving. You cannot apply for a fellowship for a CGB to stay in Sri Lanka, right?
Another question, sir. Can co-investigators of the proposing or new proposal have ongoing ICGB grants? Within brackets, not the PI.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you please repeat it?
Can co-investigators of the proposing / new proposal have ongoing ICGB grants?
Okay, if I understand correctly, if you have an ongoing CRP grant, you're not eligible to apply for another one. You're only eligible to apply once your CRP grant is finished. Okay, so my suggestion is do not apply or co-apply with a grant if you have one ongoing right now. Okay.
Another question, sir. Is postgraduate students can apply for the grant if they are not attached to a university, but the supervisor is attached to a university?
No, you need to be, you need to have a PI position. Look, you need to have a position whereby you're an independent research scientist. So the scientist who will propose will receive the funding and will be in charge of doing the project and handling the funding. So you need to be an independent scientist.
Any more questions?
For example, but if you, for example, if you're a postdoc in I don't know, in Europe or South America or anywhere, and you know that, and you've been awarded a position, for example, to start in January 2023, and you have that contract that you have awarded, but you can apply now, because you can say, oh, I'm applying because I'm going back to Sri Lanka. I have a position in January 2023, so that's fine. You can apply if you have a position that you're expected to start by January 2023, then you can apply.
It seems no more questions.
Maybe,
so
Nadisha, maybe there will be, people will then can ask questions also later on in the workshop. That will be fine also. Yeah. I mean, Nadisha, you understand what I said? If some more questions arise later
we have another question.
Okay.
Is ICGEB give funds only for young researchers below 40 years?
No. As I said, there are 5, Sri Lanka, every member country can apply for 5 grants. 3 are standard, can be, 3 are standard, can be of any age. And 2 are for early career scientists who are under 40, but have spent some time abroad recently. So if you're under 40 and never been abroad, you will be a standard grant. So if you're an independent scientist, you can apply. It's a question whether you're a standard grant or an early career grant.
Any more questions? You can use your raise hand options as well if you need any clarifications. Please use raise hand option.
Nadisha, I think Dr. Tori proposed that we should continue with the other two presentations and then come up with questions after the workshop.
Okay, Dr. Tamara.
Great.
Okay, next we have Engineer Mahesh Disanaika, Head of the Research Division of the National Science Foundation. He's going to talk about NSF role, scrutinizing ICGB CRP grant applications and endorsement. Over to you, Mr. Disanaika. Mr. Disanaika, are you there? Mr. Disanaika, we are waiting for you.
Thank you, Ms. Andisha. Myself, Mahesh Disanaika, Head RD, State Division. So I will briefly explain what is the NSF role in screening ICG grant application and endorsement. So I think as mentioned earlier, presenter. So as a ICGB country, state, so we have 5 grants. Out of that 5 grant, 3 grants are for standard research grant category, and 2 grants for early career category, research category, grant category. So altogether we have 5 grants. So what we do once we receive the applications, we will do initial screening by the NSF. So in this initial screening, we check whether the proposals are in line with the ICGB guidelines, and also we see whether especially we see the budgets are in line with the ICGB guidelines, and also we see the whether proposals are address the national priorities of the country. So this is the initial screening. Once we complete the initial screening, so we will send this application to our second screening. There is a technical screening. For that, we will get support from the expertise in this area, biotechnology. So we have a working committee on biotechnology. So we'll send this application to them. So they will do individual review of the applications. So after that, once they completed individual grant review, so we will have one meeting with all members, and then we will do the harmonization final recommendation. So under this technical evaluation, so we'll see again whether these are address the national importance. So ultimately what we see the improvement of the life of the people of the country, and then we see the what are the scientific merit of these project proposals, and also we see whether these proposals have a collaboration, especially foreign collaboration there, And also again, as I mentioned early, we see what are the budget, especially budget in line with the ICG budget, because we have seen that each vote there is some percentage, so we have to comply with that recommendations, so that guidelines, and also we will see the feasibility of this project, and also outputs and outcome of this project. As I mentioned, what is the ultimate contribution to the national development, and also we will see the what is the experience and commitment of the researcher to this project. So this is the procedure what we follows in NSF as a liaison officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Disanaika. Next, we have Professor Shiroma Handunnetti, Senior Professor of Immunology, Institute of Biochemistry, Molecular Biology and Biotechnology, University of Colombo. She was awarded the ICGEB CRP grant in 2017. So I cordially invite her, Professor Handunnetti, to share her experience regarding the writing of winning proposal. Over to you, Professor Handunnetti.
Okay, thank you, Nadisha. Can you hear me?
Yes, madam, we can hear you.
Okay, first of all, I'm very much thankful to ICGEB and to NSF for giving me this chance to share our experience with applying for ICGEB grants, and now currently we are holding one. And we have some issues, but ICGEB has been very supportive in giving us no cost extensions due to the pandemic situation. So to get on with few points which I would like to make, let me share the screen. This one, yeah. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, I will get. Okay, right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have few points which I would like to share, and so just to highlight some points which was mentioned by the previous speakers, Dr. Vittori and Mr. Eli, and so we got this, we were able to secure a grant from ICGEB back in 2017. And I'm, as Dr. Nadisha said, I'm currently working at the Institute of Biochemistry, Molecular Biology and Biotechnology at the University of Colombo. So if we just quickly go through few points that the applicants need to go through, and if I could add something in addition to what already mentioned by Dr. Vittori. So this was the title of the project that we were awarded the ICGEB grant, CRP grant in back in 2017. The title was Development of an Antigen-Based Immunodiagnostic Test for Leptospirosis. So what we identified as the research question, so in the guidelines, it is clearly stated that the applicants are supposed to address specific questions in life sciences, right? So in our case, what we considered was leptospirosis, which is an endemic disease in Sri Lanka and the second most common infectious disease in Sri Lanka. So it was quite important in terms of public health point of view. And the other main point there was like the most cases are misdiagnosed with other, say, leptospirosis cases are misdiagnosed with other diseases such as dengue. That is because The one thing is the early diagnosis of leptospirosis is challenging, and there are no what we call antigen-based diagnostic which are commercially available, and there are serological tests which are like microscopic agglutination test, and there are molecular tests like PCR. So they have their own pluses and minuses. So we were looking for developing a cost-effective diagnostic assay based on antigen detection. So that was the novelty in our proposal. So these are like the criteria that are specified to be addressed. And the second point, it was said by the previous speaker as well, to be concise and present a clear hypothesis. And we need to be realistic and proposing goals, as well as give an original novel study. And then this point is also, I think it's very kind of important. Project should address issues of special relevance to the host country, but not itself. Sometimes it might be relevant to the specific regional interest, or sometimes it might be globally. But as I agree with Dr. Vittori, it doesn't have to be. But it's kind of interesting, and it's relevant if it has some relevance to your own country. And also you need collaborations, which is very, very important within the country, or it's preferred that if you could have from outside as well. Now, the other thing is, like, you need to have a clear hypothesis and you need to present it, and it should be presented to the in the proposal clearly. You can have a graphical presentation with visual aids, so that rather than with a brief explanation, so that it's very important for the reviewers to go through. I'm just showing what we basically proposed in our proposal. Of course, the proposed research is not given here. This is the final hypothesis that we had, why we want to have this diagnostic assay. We know that leptospirosis is a zoonosis, and therefore with the human contact, humans get infected. And one way of getting is that the long-term goal was to have a vaccine that you would give a veterinary vaccine that therefore you would reduce the contact, and therefore you would reduce, finally aim to lower the risk of people getting infected with leptospirosis. But in order to do any of these things, you need to have a diagnostic test. So that was the point that we picked as a novelty. And also, in order to do any of these things, that is a basic requirement. And that's what we highlighted in our proposed research. But these are long-term things, and which we proposed along with the hypothesis. Now, the goals has to be realistic, and that has to be achieved within the time frames. So realistic, achievable objectives are very clear to be identified when you are, thinking of different ideas and formulating your objectives and your experimental design being planned. And you may pitch something, something very ambitious at the beginning, and sometimes at the end of the first phase of the review, you may get a second chance, which we got, and to revise the objectives, and also along with that to revisit the budgets and the timeline. And at that point, I think it's very important for the applicants to be positive regarding the reviewer comments that you receive, and to be flexible, and that might be one way to become successful. And of course, we need to realize the limitations of your proposed research, and I would like to share this with you all. This is part of the comment that we received after the first phase of reviewing. It said that something about the PI, but that's not the point which I want to highlight. The description of the objectives is very clear, well structured. However, the objective seems to be too broad to carry them out, right? So more concise, defined objectives will be beneficial to achieve success, so that like that long-term objectives were sort of taken away, and then we refined and revised the proposal. And of course, along with that, we had to revise the budgets as sort of advised by the reviewers, and then timelines. Everything was revised at that time. So The next point is like that, that your novelty, your proposal has to be original. It should not be a repetitive thing, and that is very important. So in our case, it was like currently there is no antigen detecting diagnostic assay that is commercially available. Some people have certain in-house, but nothing is commercially available. So what is done in the field of leptospirosis in our case was that diagnosis done based on microscopic agglutination test, or in some cases by culture. And recently we use PCR as well, right? So these are few other points. Now it has to be of regional interest as well as to the country. So these kind of diagnostics are really important for the whole region, and to some all the areas which where we have leptospirosis. In Sri Lanka, it's endemic, and developing a proper diagnostic tool is very important. And this will also support the clinicians for the initial or the accurate diagnosis of leptospirosis. And one other point which I would like to highlight is that if you have a potential for training young scientists, and of course you need to have collaborations with different specialties coming. Otherwise, like your research team has to be sort of giving and having all the contributions from various experts as well. And in our case, we had a PhD student. So this is the members of the research team, myself and Professor Prema Vansha from the Faculty of Science, University of Colombo, Professor Rajapaksa from Faculty of Medicine. So he's the clinician in the group. Then Dr. Narmada Fernando, who is a young co-investigator from IBMBB, and a PhD student, Ms. Dakshika. And of course, other than these group of researchers, we got the contribution from several master's students as the project was initiated and went by. So these are some of the points which I would wanted to share with the prospective applicants. And thank you very much for your time. Nadisha, over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam, for sharing your valuable experience regarding the proposal writing. So now let's move on to the Q&A session again. So if you have any questions, you can use the raise hand option, or you can post the questions to the chat box as well. It seems no more questions. So the recording will be available on the NSF YouTube channel as well. So you can visit our YouTube channel, NSF Sri Lanka. So we are reaching the last couple of minutes. So I would like to cordially invite Dr. Shanta Siri, Head of the International Affairs Division, to deliver the closing remarks. Over to you, Dr. Shanta Siri.
Thank you, Nadisha. My voice is audible. No?
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Vittorio and Chiana, ICGEB team, and participants, Dr. Tamara Dias, Additional Director of the NSF, and IAD team, good morning and good afternoon. And we have come to the concluding remarks item with a successful ending item of our today event. To recap very briefly,
We lost the connection, I think.
Mr. Shanta, we can't hear you. Dr. Shanta Siri's line is breaking. He is trying to join again.
Now, okay?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, my connection was interrupted. Uh, I am sure today deliberations from the ICGB resource persons, our participants got the key messages on how to devise or articulate their proposal addressing the ICGB guidelines and criteria. I suppose I expect more number of applications with the aligning with the ICGB guidelines as well as our national priorities, and accordingly with competitive proposals so that you will be in a position to secure a grant from the ICGB. As highlighted by the Dr. Vittorio, this is we have to highlight this is very competitive basis. Therefore, be mindful with what highlighted by Dr. Vittorio, and accordingly draft your prepare your application. So to conclude, I wish to thank Dr. Tamara Dias, Additional Director of the National Science Foundation. Thank you, Madam, for your sparing your valuable time by delivering the welcome speech. And Dr. Vittorio and Tiana from the ICGB, thank you very much for your cordial coordination. Of course, this event couldn't happen overnight. Back and forth mails and with Dr. Vittorio and Dr. Tiana. And thank you very much for excellent coordination as well as for being patient with our power cut. And also, please, we want to thank the Director General of the ICGB and Ms. Mariana for their excellent coordination and even their support, kind cooperation and their agreement with to hold this kind of a webinar jointly for the second time. Thank you very much. And of course, I would like to thank Professor Shiroma Haduneti, former ICGB grantee. She's a senior researcher in our country who has won a ICGB grant. I am sure your experience shared with the participants will enlighten them for how to make a successful case. And finally, I would like to thank our IT manager, Mr. Madhava, and my IAD team, Ms. Nadisha, Jelena, and Ilushi. Thank you very much for pushing my shoulders, sharing the responsibilities to make this event a success, spite of challenges, power cuts, and other interruptions. Thank you very much. And finally, the last and not least, all the participants, thank you very much for your encouraging participation. Of course, if you have any unanswered questions, any matter, clarification you want, please email us so that we could, I am sure our ICGB team, Dr. Vittorio, will be happy to send any clarification or answer to you.
Yes, I confirm this, Shanta. I confirm this. Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you,